This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day everybody, and thanks so much for tuning in yet again to another episode of the show. Holy shit, it has been a turbulent past 24 hours for the show, easily the most turbulent in the well over 5 years that I've been doing this now. Wooshka, the host of the podcast, is going off air at sunsetting at the end of August, so I had to find a new home, and I had to find one very quickly because they recommended give it at least a month for all of the episodes to feed into the new podcast host. You can redirect an RSS feed. Those of you who are technically minded understand what I'm talking about. Of course, I did that, but nothing happened. And as a consequence of doing that redirection, I guess I went off air for the better part of 12 hours. So sorry about that. Technology failed, it got in the way, but someone very helpful at Anchor, the new podcast host, he helped, and I'm very grateful for that. It all comes down to the individual needing to give a shit or wanting to give a shit, doesn't it? Bet you've all experienced that in your life at some point. Somebody just cares and you get things done. Down to the matter at hand, I have a conversation with Zach Moonshine to share with you. If you are unfamiliar, Zach hosts Metal Devastation Radio. He's the fella at the centre of Metal Devastation PR, and his most recent venture, well, we talk all about that in the opening exchanges. He's hosting a festival. He's got a festival happening. It's very cool stuff, I've got to say. I mentioned the word entrepreneurial, and he's exactly that. He's one of the only metal entrepreneurs out there, and that's one of the key reasons that I wanted to have a chat with him. There isn't a song. We're going to dive into the conversation. So here he is, my chat with Zach Moonshine. How's things been otherwise for you?
Oh, man, super busy, man. Insane.
I bet, mate. So you got this festival going on at the moment?
Yeah. We decided to do a festival this year, and it is, it's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of work.
What inspired the festivals are cool, no doubt, but mate, they are a lot of work, mate. So what inspired you to, make that deal with the devil, so to speak?
Well, that was actually my wife, my partner, Raven. We had a mutual friend that reached out to us for help with a local festival he was trying to put on in his area, and things didn't work out. And then he asked to see if we could put on something here in Tennessee, and we started moving forward with that. And then he pulled out of it, so it just kind of became something that we were doing. And I mean, it just, I don't know, pretty much once we put the notice out there on social media that we were doing a festival, that's when the madness just started happening. I mean, there was hundreds of bands that started contacting us, and people that wanted to be a part of it. And it's just, it's just been a whirlwind ever since, man.
Yeah. Have the challenges surprised you, though, insofar as I know you've had some issues with the local community there, a bit of satanic panic thing going on there. Is that real or imagined, insofar as has the opposition to the festival been something where you've thought, wow, people are still worried about this shit?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, here in the South, because we live in the southern states, in the southern area of the United States, is considered the Bible Belt. And there are still a lot of churches around here that, they do stuff with like snake handling and crazy stuff like that. Like they are very, very serious about their religion. And they do have quite a hold on a lot of the local politics. So they do control a lot of things that go on around here. And to be honest with you, for a long time, I've wondered why so many of my favorite bands never play in Tennessee. And, I wasn't sure if, I was like, what are the promoters just not looking at venues around here, or is it what's the deal? And since we started doing this, that's one of the things that was one of the first hurdles that we ran into, was trying to find a venue to book. because nobody was returning our phone calls. Nobody wanted to deal with it. As soon as you told them heavy metal, they didn't want to deal with it. And I couldn't understand why. And now I think I know, now, looking at what Beach Lake has, the venue that did agree to do it with us, looking at what they're having to go through now with the local community, I can see probably if that's what these other venues were worried about, I can kind of understand, they just didn't want to deal with the backlash.
It's very interesting in 2022 that we have these sorts of these sort of issues to contend with. I mean, the Satanic Panic, just for people listening, just for some background, it's been completely and absolutely debunked. Okay, there was this idea that there was this satanic pedophile ring running out of childcare services, I think it was, wasn't it? And they don't add up and they don't hold water. But anyway, it all sort of interlinks from the perspective that they're all about fear, driving fear, aren't they? And these days, I mean, heavy metal has long been a tonic for those of us that sit just outside of the mainstream norm, even just in a cultural perspective. We all participate in life. But, I mean, you've got a lot of Christian churches these days that embrace heavy metal during services. So to hear that you were up against that sort of opposition was just bizarre.
Yeah. And what made it, it was kind of funny too, how it started. I mean, we were posting things in local groups on Facebook and stuff like that. And we figured we'd ruffle a few feathers. And obviously that would help with publicity, but I didn't know that they were going to take it to this level. And the band that they attacked first, that's on the bill, is Casket Robbery. They have a song in their discography called Annabelle's Hell, which is about a little girl that gets possessed by demons and starts killing it. But it's based on like horror movies and stuff like that, So anybody that's seen horror movies already knows that, and anybody that follows that band knows that they're not satanic in the least. It's all horror movies, theme type stuff. But they, one of the pastors at the local church in that community looked into that band and found the lyrics online, and he posted those lyrics, and that's what got the thing just going out of control. They were trying to say that because it was an all ages show, that we're inviting all the children there so that they can learn about how to murder and become demon possessed and all this crazy stuff. And the funny thing is, the headlining band is Summoner Circle, and they actually do they have like ceremonial sacrifices on stage, and it's a lot more in tune with what they were trying to say. Yeah, but since then they figured out about that. Now they're going nuts over that one too. But yeah, it was funny that they went after Casket Robbery first.
Globally, certainly across the Western Hemisphere, inflation is soaring. The cost of living is out of control. Petrol prices or gas prices are through the roof. We've got all sorts of issues. There's OxyContin addictions or pharmaceutical, heroin, whatever. If it's a different varieties out there, there's addictions right across the board. Yet they choose to focus on this. I'd say that their priorities are somewhat skewed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a really small town, and this thing, us bringing this festival there and all these vendors and local businesses that are going to be there, it's only going to help the local economy. And that's something that they definitely need. But yeah, it's funny that they're so much worried about, I don't know. It's nuts.
Yeah, it is, mate. It's a crazy old world, mate. Not a lot makes sense most of the time. That's for bloody sure. So, but look, just about you as I've asked you to come onto the show, right? Because we did some promotion. Thank you through you for my book. That went well. And I actually do listen to your show as well. I tend to put it on Sunday afternoons. I flip between you and, the classic metal show, Chris Aiken and Neely. And I enjoy what it is that you do. I think you've got a good flow. You've introduced me to some bands that I otherwise wouldn't have heard. But your LinkedIn elevator pitch says that you own Metal Devastation Radio. You publish and write blogs related to metal music. And, of course, you host the Zach Moonshine Show. Now, I'm sure I've also seen that you're in a band as well. So does that about sum things up for you, do you think?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, metal radio promotion and yeah, it all started with that one man band project that I put out, Brutal Death Fuck, years ago. That was my introduction to internet radio and everything else that followed. Really, back then. So that was like almost 20 years ago. When I put that on MySpace, and then I started getting hit up by podcasters and people that did internet radio, and they were asking me, hey, can we play your song on our radio? That of course blew my mind. I was like, wow, I've made it. And but of course I didn't realize, it's a much smaller community than what you would think of. But at the same time, it was really amazing, and it just opened the doors to me to see this world of internet radio. And one thing led to another, and then I got offered a gig as being a DJ, and I did that for a while on another station, and then wasn't really happy with the way that they were. I don't know. I just felt like we could definitely do something a little bit more inclusive and try to get other people involved, and that's what sort of started Metal Devastation Radio. It was born out of just trying to do something that could get other companies and other circles in the underground to come together, and then from that I went into blogging, because blogging, that was mostly because everywhere I researched how to get more listeners to your radio station, how to get more people to your website. Everywhere you go, it says you got to have a blog. And so I started doing that and kind of imitating things that I would see on like Blabbermouth and stuff like that, just posting stuff out there that'll get people to chit chatter and click the links. And then next thing I know, it was getting so much traffic. I guess it started getting the attention of bands as well. And they were like, hey, if we pay you, how much, could you promote our single or our album? And could you send out a newsletter like you do for your shows and stuff like that? And that's how the promotion thing kind of got born out of that. So it's been a nonstop, one thing led to another, and just constantly, I just go with the flow, man.
In a way, it's entrepreneurial, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, a couple years ago, I was working in a factory still and trying to do all this as just a hobby, as a side project. And then after the pandemic, of course, we were home for a while during the quarantine. That's when things really went to the next level, because it was sink or swim type of situation, and then I took this all seriously and made the move to take it to the next level. And now I'm doing it full time, and now we're doing this festival. It's insane, man. I can't believe that it's come this far, but just forever grateful to everybody out there that took the time to believe in us and supports us, and just everybody, people like you that listen to the shows and all that, man. It's just all of it's really amazing.
Yeah, I find I've been doing this for about 5 years or so. And did you find as well there was a certain point where it felt like the train in the caboose went over the mountain and the momentum just started kicking in, and you didn't need to, say, pay for advertising? And I mean, I'm nowhere near making this a living, by the way, but for you as someone who's able to make it as a living, was it a situation where it became its own beast and its own entity at some point, and you were just sort of along for the ride as well?
Yeah. It was during the pandemic is really when it became. During the quarantine was when it really became like a full-time gig, and then the factory called us all back in, and so then it was like I was doing two jobs at once, and it just got to the point where it was just ridiculous. There was no no time for sleep or family or anything else. It was just constant trying to keep up with this all night and then going to the factory all day. And that's when I had to make my choice.
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that like it. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to constantly nurture and the fire burns, but you got to keep putting gas. You got to keep fueling it to keep it going too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I take it you're doing this. This vision is completely intact insofar as you've had no external influence or what have you. This is completely your idea.
Yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, I've learned a lot from my peers and from my colleagues in the that are in similar fields. So I've got a lot of friends that do this sort of thing, and just kind of there's a community aspect of it, and we all kind of watch each other and learn from each other and grow in that way. But I didn't go to school for this, so
Yeah, that's interesting. The community aspect of it. That's a good point to bring that one there up, because that's something that I certainly struggle with on this side of things here. It's, I don't know, I definitely two lives. The music is one thing, but then I've got a whole other life. The job, the family life, like you've alluded to there. But community, mate, there's about 3 or 4 of us in Australia that do this, and we all know each other. and I tend to find I have to go abroad, to people like yourself in terms of it's more of a global community. But obviously in the States being a far bigger economy than what we've got here. And I know that from a podcast side of things, it's all global because it's all part of the worldwide internet, of course. But did you find that has the community aspect of it, has it been straightforward, or has it thrown up its own challenges?
Yeah, it definitely throws up its own challenges. I mean, like one of the funny things was when I first started the radio station, I thought that we could have links to other internet radio stations on the website, and that they would be cool with that, and we'd all kind of help each other out. But the truth was, at the time, that they were kind of laughing at me, like, who the fuck is this guy, man? He's putting he's like, we're not going to share his shit, but that's okay. You can keep sharing our stuff. And I learned that the hard way. Like that's not exactly the way it. There's a lot of people. There's always going to be those people out there that are more self-centered or self-serving. They're looking at their own thing, and it wasn't really until the PR thing kicked in. Now it's like on a different level. Now people are seeing, well, okay, well, if we interview this band that he sent us, he's going to post that on his website and share it with his people, and so we're cool with it. And that's so it's just been a way of learning how to work with the way that certain people just learning how to work with different people on different aspects. But the PR thing has definitely made that more accessible. It's just made it easier to reach across the aisle, I guess you could say, to other communities and help each other out.
Yeah, I'm really glad that's your feedback on that point, actually, because I certainly found that I've tried to create a bit. I'm not going out of my way to create community, but people aren't receptive. You're right, but you've got a bit of a carrot there, and the PR side of things is there. So it makes me feel a bit better about what I do, hearing you say that, because I'm just about the interviews, of course. I don't have the wherewithal or the time or the inclination to do the PR side of things. But people are linking in with what you're saying, and I certainly resonate there with the idea that you were an open book and you were sharing things, and it sort of wasn't reciprocated. I think that's a fairly common experience for some of us at the very least.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it does trip me out that some people are like that, but at the same time, I kind of understand it. That's just the way that it works. But you can try to fight it all day, or you can try to work with it and make the best of it. And in this situation, that's just what I got to do to get the bands out there. And there's still situations where there's websites and magazines and whatnot that'll take the stuff that you send them and they'll post it out there, but they won't let you know. I don't know why. Sometimes I'm like, what's the deal with that? Are they trying to make it seem like they just found that on their own, or does it just take too much time to tag and let people know? But we still try to figure it out, and a lot of times the bands, they'll send me stuff and they'll be like, hey, did you send this to so-and-so? I'm like, yeah. So
yeah, it's amazing how many times you see things sort of pop up across the internet. One of my mates in Holland sent me something the other day that there was a interview with Gene Hoglan that I did that went viral. You know how these things go, you got no control over them. Blabbermouth picked them up and boom. Right. And he was talking about my podcast. And what did he say? He said something like, it's an aside really, so I'll just make this point. What did he say? Scars and Guitars. It's a very exclusive club where you've got to have a scar and a guitar. I'm thinking, what the hell are you talking about? These people saying the weirdest shit. Yeah, I know. But I mean, hey, the cool thing is though, you got mentioned there, and at least they put your name in there. Yeah, the attribution was there. I actually put my real name, Andrew Mackay Smith, in there too, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. Normally people just, those. I can't. I mean, I'm out there at this. I can't stand some of the bigger ones like Decibel and all the rest of it. It's, more power to them for creating the audience that they've got, and there's obviously some money behind them and all the rest of it. But there's a clickbait aspect to it all that I don't like whatsoever. Maybe not Decibel, Metal Injection, definitely, and Louder Sound. Those ones, they've picked up a lot of the stuff that I put on the podcast. My podcast, probably the same for you. And it's they present it like as if it's some syndicated news service, like as if we are in service to them. Yeah. I mean, a lot of those bigger websites, that's definitely their niche is posting those articles that'll get people riled up and stuff like that, But I don't know. Who's your interviews? I like your interviews. You definitely got a different style than most people in that you allow the interview to unfold. And in terms of who you feel if you were asked to showcase, say, an interview which really encapsulated who you are as an interviewer and the style that you have, which interview do you think you'd nominate? Oh God, that's a hard question, man. There's been so many different ones. I don't know, just a couple. A lot of them, are people that I definitely identify with, and especially like ones that I'm friends with on social media that we talk regularly, or not, like anytime I've had Jeremy Kling from Inhuman Condition on the show, he's always a great chat. It always feels like I'm just sitting there shooting the shit with a friend on the couch, listening to some tunes or so yeah. I mean, there's so many different ones. So there's ones where I'm totally fanboying. When I talked to Eric from Watain, that was insane. I mean, that was one of my favorite bands for a long time, and then to sit there and talk to him was definitely. But at the same time, I still tried to make it feel as natural as possible. Just like I said, it's just I've always kind of looked at it like it's just envisioning yourself in the jam room with your buddies, and you're just listening to tunes and drinking some beers and talking about things, just. Yep, I understand. I can relate to that absolutely. Yeah. Hey, this next question might be a bit easier for you to answer. Have you had any interviews that you really feel have been incredibly challenging? For example, I can easily nominate mine, which was Rex from Pantera. Most of them have gone smooth. Looking back, I think there was one time when I did feel like I kind of put my foot in my mouth when I was talking to Mike Nine from I Hate God, and they had put out a record. I can't remember which record it was. It was
they had sort of been out. They hadn't put out a record for a while, and during the interview, at some point, I asked him. I said something like, "So this is sort of like a comeback record for you guys," and I feel like I kind of felt like it might have pissed him off a little bit because it was like a comeback, like, I don't know, it's online, you can hear it, but I kind of, I took a step back and I was like, oh shit, what do I fucking do, man? But I let it fly and came back in. And I think we still managed to finish it without it being totally, I don't know. Maybe it was probably more in my head than anything, but that's one of the few times that I can think of that I felt like was a little bit challenging. But other than that, I mean, it's everybody's just usually been really, really cool. I mean, that's one of the things I love about this is finding out how many people out there are just really cool, down to earth people like you and me. We're all very similar.
Yeah, I definitely find that too. In well over 700 interviews now, most of which I've posted for the podcast, it'd be the 1% of the 1% that I could say that I consider a general failure, and very few of them would be of any bands of prominence. But certainly my chat with Rex, it's out there for anybody to have a listen to. But I did edit the opening exchanges there because Rex threatened to hang up. Because I gave him a compliment about being a great bassist in Pantera, and he said something like, if this is going to be another heavy metal interview, I'm not going to fucking do it. And I was like, honestly, looking back at I should have just said, Rex, maybe when you're feeling a bit better about things, maybe we can reconnect then. But, mate, you can't just ignore the fact that you're in probably the biggest heavy metal band, and probably also too, I've got to say, one of the most important metal bands ever. Not just metal bands, but bands ever. And people are going to be intensely interested about your time there. Hell, you even wrote a book about it. So rather than just focus on your new album, which isn't that great, to be honest with you. I mean, it's got its moments. His solo album that he released a couple of years ago where he played guitar on. Mm-hmm. But it certainly isn't going to be his breadwinner moving forward, as time has proven clearly. With Phil and Rex breaking bread and asking Charlie and Zach Wilde to join them on some Pantera experience that they're putting back together again. But that was I wrote about it in my book, actually, a very challenging interview for a number of reasons. And I tend to use that one as the benchmark, if you like, and which I judge any other challenging interviews against. And I've got not had any that have even come anywhere close to that one.
Yeah, I totally understand, and being a huge Pantera fan myself, if I ever had the chance to talk to Rex or anybody else in the band, it would be very difficult to focus on anything else besides the Pantera legacy, to be honest with you. I mean, because that's what most of us know them for, but yeah, I can see how, with their side projects, when they're trying to pump them up, like that's where their focus is at. And they're thinking that everybody else is thinking the same way, but it's, we're looking at the classic stuff, man.
I tend to find one informs the other. Okay. So, I mean, you can feel really good about having a great chat about Pantera or what have you, whoever I'm talking to, if they're in a larger band and they've got a side project, you can talk about the larger band, and then you can it's not about inserting questions in around the newer project, but it's about joining the dots. Okay, so you did this then, so why is this important now? That sort of thing. And that's how I generally would structure my because I don't really have interviews, as you can tell, they're conversations. And it was just very challenging. And I think it was, ironically, I mentioned, in Metal Injection a moment ago, I think those guys had a terrible time with him as well. He simply wouldn't answer some of their questions. I think it was Metal Injection anyway. I'm drawing on my memory here. But I think at that point in Rex's life, he might not have been in the best place, put it that way. Certainly not in as good a place as what he might have intended to be, given he had his first ever solo album to promote. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that reminds me, recently I talked to Paul from Cannibal Corpse, and he was promoting a side project that he has right now that's more of like a classic rock type thing. And going into the interview, I was a little bit worried that maybe he wouldn't want to talk about Cannibal Corpse at all, and just focus on the solo project. But he was definitely cool in talking about both, and we just kind of flowed back and forth with it.
Which one of your interviews again, I've got an interview, Stuart Anstis from Cradle of Filth, which far eclipses anything else that I've done in terms of it's taken on its own life. It's got tens of thousands of downloads. But for you, has there been an interview like that as well?
Like what I would consider the most successful, or my favorite?
Oh, yeah, most successful in terms of it's just gone on to live a life of its own. It's been rebroadcast and picked up by so many other outlets. It's probably your most downloaded and listened to episode or interview.
That's a hard question too. I definitely saw some high numbers on that Watain interview that I did, but to be honest with you, man, there's so many. I'm constantly moving forward that I don't. It's rare that I get a chance to go back and check the stats on each individual one. As crazy as that sounds, I do look at the stats for as far as like the overall website on Google and stuff like that. But as far as individual interviews, I don't know, man. There's been so many, it's drawn a blank. But one of the most exciting moments, and one of the ones that sticks out the most to me is actually one of the first ones. I think it was my second interview, and it was with Eric from Trouble. Rest in peace, man.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
He was doing the Blackfinger record at the time. And I can't remember what promoter or record label sent it over to me and asked me if I would interview. And I was thinking, my gosh, like they don't even, like, I'll try to do my best, but I was extremely nervous about that one. And, but it makes me laugh too sometimes, because I know I see a lot of people. It was definitely a lucky strike, for that to be so early on, because sometimes you kind of have to work your way up in the ranks to get some of the bigger ones. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I do. Yep, I do. Yeah. As I say, it just felt like at a moment for Scars and Guitars. The caboose and the train went over the mountain, and I can actually tell you when that exact moment was. It was when what's his name, Georgia Lynch from Dokken, of course. Everybody knows George, who's a fan of guitar work. His publicist reached out and wanted him on the show, and I couldn't believe it, to be honest with you. I thought, of course. And that interview ended up going absolutely. That's another one to talk in terms of the high watermark on a few levels, personal and from a PR perspective, because he made some comments at the time that didn't even register, about Donald Trump. He can't stand him, as so many of the musicians can't, who are very vocal, at least, about politics. Didn't think anything of it. I didn't even dive deeper on the topic. I just let him talk about it, and we moved on to the next subject. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong in terms of it getting picked up. Of course, Blabbermouth still, to this day, 4 years later, still run with the quotes. Whenever there's a conversation, whenever there's something brought up about George, I can see, and he said on Scars and Guitars this about Donald Trump. And it baffled me to an extent, because who cares? We're here to talk about the music, sure. And I'll talk about politics all day long. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those people who think that they're separate. But what he said wasn't exactly newsworthy, because so many musicians are out there, and insofar as at the time, certainly their opposition to Trump. And I don't dive deeper on these things because I just don't feel it's necessary. We'll talk about, I've been on record about my response to COVID, certainly here and in the States. I think it's been disgusting, the totalitarianism. But the Trump thing was completely different. It's like, hey, man, say whatever you want to say. I'm not going to dive much deeper on this. But yeah, it just lived a life of its own. So have you had something similar where someone's brought something up on the show and you've not even registered at the time, but Blabbermouth, et cetera, they've picked it up and run with it, and it's become the thing in the interview?
There was, Gosh, there was something a while back, but now I can't. I'm drawing a blank when I'm trying to think of who it was. But I do remember seeing one that kind of got repeated a few times, and it made me laugh for the same reason, because it was just something that was in there that I didn't pick up myself, you know. But yeah, I mean that's just what those websites are, you know, they're out there to do, you know, like that's how they make their that's how they make their that's how they pay their bills, you know. They're always looking for little tidbits and things that are said here and there, and then they'll just run with it, man.
Yeah,
but it is funny.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Someone else I'd love to talk to is Borovoy, you know, from Metal Maniacs and Blabbermouth. And I would love to have him on. And I've spoken to a few people that have actually cornered him in a bar or what have you and say, "What the fuck? What are you doing?" You know, Dino from Fear Factory is one of them. He told me, he said, Dino hit him up because, of course, Dino's just, you know, ripe for clickbait. And Dino, I've got to say, Dino's a lovely fella. My perception of him before the chat wasn't great, but actually having him on the show, he's actually a really good guy, very down to earth, and will answer every question you put in front of him. But I think it was Dino that said to me that he cornered him in a bar one day. Says, "What the fuck are you doing, man?" And he goes, "If you don't want to feature in the pages, just don't say things that are controversial or that are going to make the show." But I mean, that's make the platform. But that's very hard, isn't it? Because we're all humans and we talk in the moment. And, you know, it's not a case of you self-censor. I don't think anybody should self-censor, by the way. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, use your common sense, but don't self-censor. But Bori and a couple of the others, mate, they've certainly created a bit of it's more than a cottage industry around clickbait, haven't they?
Yeah, for sure. I know. There's been a lot of bands, you know, especially doing PR, that have asked me before, you know, like how do you get your stuff put in some of these bigger websites, like what you mentioned, and that's usually, you know, there's nothing else you can really say. You know, it's like, you know, we can send them stuff all day long and, you know, and hope that they'll check it out. You know, they might, and sometimes they do every now and then, but for the most part, you know, the easiest way to get in there is find somebody online and pick a fight with them, start talking about some political bullshit. You know, if you've got a death in the band, if you've got a political fight with somebody, or if you're in a war online with somebody else, you're bound to get in there for sure, man. Front page. But I mean, you know, as far as like, you know, hey, check out this new video, you know, man, I mean, that's just not what, unfortunately, that's not what gets them the clicks either, though. You know, like, you know, not what people are that much, you know, if you just look at the comment sections on social media and stuff like that, you know, those controversial things that they post like that, hundreds and thousands of comments, you know, because that's what people just go nuts over. They love to argue about something. So, and they know that they're exploiting that, but that's their business, man.
It is indeed. Yeah. So is there anybody that's on your bucket list in terms of interviews that you really hope an interview comes about in the near future?
Oh man, I don't know.
I'll ask all the tough questions.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, obviously anybody from Metallica would be cool.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've got a different take on that, but yeah, do tell. Who would you chat to first?
I mean, any, you know, James, Lars, Kirk, Rob Trujillo. I mean, any of them, it would be cool because that's one of the first bands that I can, you know, from my childhood. I mean, I talked to Paul Di'Anno from Iron Maiden, so I've already gotten that one. But Rob Halford from Judas Priest, that would also be cool.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Just basically, I mean, you know, any of those guys that were hanging on my walls when I was a kid, you know, that's always a trip, you know, like I talked to Doro from Warlock, and that was cool for that reason, and I even told her, I was like, when I was a kid, I had posters of you on my wall.
Yeah.
And she started laughing at me, but she was really sweet. She was really cool to talk to. It's just, it's always cool to talk to your idols, your childhood heroes that we grew up listening to. But at the same time, it's also cool talking to the underground artists that are coming out, because some of those guys are so excited and so just fired up, and they just, so there's just different aspects of the interview, like it's cool talking to the legends, even though they've probably told you the same things they've told other people a million times, but that's still cool. But then it's also cool talking to the young guys, the young bands, that are just coming up, that are fresh and hungry, and so I don't know. I enjoy all of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. There is the duality to what we do, isn't there? Because we get, how many interview opportunities would you get a week? Probably in your case, probably hundreds. But in my case, it's in the tens, if you like. And I have to be selective just based on energy levels and the amount of time that I've got for things. But I've found that some of the less experienced bands, the bands that aren't out there, that aren't known, they don't really go well on podcasts, some of those chats, I find, because it's not like this where you can have a conversation, and it probably helps that you're a fully fledged adult too. A lot of these young bands, they're in their early 20s. They don't have a lot of life experience yet. And so you're trying to create a bit of a to and fro like we do here. And it doesn't happen. So I end up listening back to the chat and I think, do I even put this bloody out there? And I've got to say, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just turn it into a yarn and just share it as a blog entry or what have you.
Yeah. I've definitely talked to some young bands that you could tell they were very nervous, and I really had to push to get those answers out of them, or get them to feel a little bit more comfortable and loosen up. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And look, and just on Metallica too, I'd certainly talked to Rob Trujillo, but I don't really consider him strictly a Metallica member for obvious reasons. He's been in a bunch of bands and is an outstanding bassist. But I just don't know whether there's that much to talk about with those Metallica guys. That they've had such an interesting career, and that you could dive into so many aspects of it, but it's all been covered so much.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like what I was saying earlier, like everything that they would probably be able to tell me, they've already told somebody a million times. So yeah, definitely on that level, I wouldn't know what to really ask them, to be honest with you, because I've read everything and I've already heard all the other interviews. I guess just to get them to make a tag, just to say, hey, this is Metallica and you're listening to Zach on Metal Devastation Radio.
Yeah.
We'll just cut it. It'll be like, a 3-minute, 2-minute fucking interview.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think Joe Rogan probably had the best interview, I think, certainly that I've listened to, with James Hetfield, and that, Joe's pretty good in it. He asks a question, open-ended question, sits back and just lets the person weave their web, so to speak, through conversation. That was probably the most insight I'd ever seen anybody obtain out of James Hetfield, but he seems like a really guarded and cautious character on that front. And I'd be asking questions like, so why did you fuck with Jason so badly? I don't know whether to go down that well.
Yeah, that might not go so well, but yeah, I totally feel you, man.
Oh, mate, yeah. Hey, I noticed that you use Mixcloud for your streaming. Why do you use that platform there? Is there some benefit? I'm just curious, that's all on this front here. Is there some significant benefit you find with using that platform?
Trying to look back and remember like why I chose to go with that one versus, I think because I'm uploading music into the podcast. I put the audio, I put the interview ones, just the interview on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube, but they get a little bit weird when you add music. So Mixcloud, they do pay the bands some royalties somehow through for the listens. So it's easy. It's pretty easy to upload the podcast on Mixcloud and put the track listing on there and have it timestamped to where whenever somebody's listening to it, they're able to track, how many times they've listened to what songs by what bands, and then pay those bands whatever small percentage of royalties. Who knows? It's probably fucking not even a penny, but I mean, it's something.
Yeah, not even enough for a hot dog skin, mate. I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I think that whole thing's just a bit of a horse and show, whatever, carrot and pony show or whatever it might be. It's really ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I nominate who I play too, but God knows. I mean, I certainly have never seen a cent from anything that I play. I mean, YouTube, I think, you see the numbers come through there, and I mean, it's a couple $100 or whatever it might be, but you certainly would never bank on it. And same thing for the artists when you play their music. I mean, most of the artists, especially the underground stuff, doesn't even register on Spotify. So it's less than 1,000 listens, I think, per individual. I think that's how it works with Spotify anyway. So Spotify are known for paying 3/5 of fuck all. So, and that's for the big bands. 9 Inch Nails and Radiohead have long been on record about that, I think. Certainly Radiohead have been. Yeah, mate, it'd just almost be easy to say, here's my music. They get $100, just a flat rate, and they'll play it for eternity, or it's available there to play for eternity, I should say. At least they would get something commensurate to buying a case of beer and some Chinese food.
Right.
Mate, it's all we've got. Yeah, Mate, I'll make this one my last question for you. Plans, in other words, the future. What do you think it holds for you and for the show?
Man, I have I really have no idea. I mean, every day is a surprise, but right now I just hope that we can keep things going at the same rate that we're doing and the level. We got this festival. We're going to knock this out in October, and we're already looking at another festival for next year. We got 2 actually. We're looking at doing another one here in Tennessee next year at some point, and we are also in the process of doing another one in Chicago here pretty soon. So just looking forward to doing that and seeing where that all takes us. And I don't know, man.
It unfolds as it does, doesn't it, in this world here? I mean, there's certainly the bands need to have conversations with people, and they're not going to be in the pages of the Rolling Stone anytime soon. So I'll finish on this note. I think we do provide an important service, but it's a service we do anyway, isn't it? Because we enjoy we love the music, and it's part of our soul.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, even if I wasn't doing the promotional thing as a business, or if I wasn't doing the festivals or anything like that, I would still just be interviewing bands and doing my little radio show, because that's what it's all about. That's where the passion is. It's just fun being a part of this community and getting to talk to these different people.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree on that point there. It's a unique privilege, and it's something I've never taken for granted. So thanks, mate, for the chat. I love listening to your show, for the PR side of things. Actually, I'll make this my final point, just for any bands out there. I mean, you helped me with my book, so you don't just do music. But what are your channels, and what's the web address that people can go to if they want to, say, plug into your services?
All they got to do is go to metaldevastationradio.com, and everything's right there.
Mate, it's been great. It's been great to finally catch up.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate it. Anytime.
No, thanks, brother. No worries. Chat again soon. Cheers.
All right.
Well, there he is, Zach Moonshine, ladies and gentlemen. Great to chat to him. Again, as I mentioned up front, this is the first episode that is being broadcast via Anchor. I hope it gets out there to everybody. God knows I've done enough work to ensure that the RSS feed links up to all of the usual podcast platforms. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast series. I'm going to leave you with a bit of a message about my book, so please stick around and have a listen to that. Otherwise, it's a very goodbye until next time.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
You know, if you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words there. Sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, you know, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silent Oz from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, you know, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
You know, my name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot.
And we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.